All right, everybody, we're going to get started.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is awesome to see everyone here. My name is Greg Catano, and I'm General Manager, VP of Business Development here at Phase 2. And I recognize a lot of you in the crowd. You guys probably also know that I'm pretty active in the virtual reality side of things too. I just love tech, I love AI, and I love this group. So we're so grateful to be hosting you guys again. And I just want to tell you just a little bit about Phase 2. We curated, I'm sure a lot of you already know what we do, but we curated not just to be another space, not just to be another office space where you know, you can get that pretty much anywhere, but curated a community of frontier technology, including everything from AI, VR, AR, blockchain, robotics. So once everyone, thank you, once everyone heard what we were doing, I mean, the doors opened and we got a lot of response. So great community, and we're also curating these amazing tech events like this. So we're super excited. I wanted to hand the mic over briefly to Dan, one of the co-founders of Phase 2.
Hey everyone. Just want to say thank you for coming out, obviously, tonight. When Todd said there was going to be 150 people here, I was like, yeah, he's probably right. And there are. So, yeah, this is very exciting. 2019 is a big year for us. 2018, we did 80 to 100 events. So now that we're here, we decided, we'll tone it down just a bit. We'll do a little bit, you know, we'll do fewer but larger events. And so I think this is kind of a testament to that sort of focus. So, yeah, very excited to have this event. Thank you to Todd. And looking forward to tonight.
And without further ado, I want to introduce Todd Terrazas, who's the founder of AILA. Let's give him a big round of applause.
All right, everybody, thank you for coming out. Who here's been through here? Who here is this their first time at an AILA event? Raise your hands. Ooh, nice. Who's here been here before? Beautiful, thanks for coming back. My name is Todd Terrazas. I'm the founder and president of AILA. We started this about almost 3 years ago. It was just a simple meetup, and then it matured in the last 5 months into a nonprofit organization where we're pursuing our 501c3 status right now. Our real mission is really to democratize AI and to really allow everyone to really understand how these technologies, like AI, really do impact society, our own lives, and industry. And we do that every month by focusing on a different topic. So last month was on investment. This month's obviously on entertainment and media. Next month we'll be on the classroom, so education. We'll be at Google's headquarters in Venice. April we'll be doing something around AI for Earth, so around sustainability and climate change. And then in May we'll be focusing on the future of work through a world building exercise. And then in June we'll wrap up for the first half of the year with our symposium on creating a fair and ethical future. So every month we do this, every third Thursday, so mark your calendar. But we can't really do this without, obviously, amazing partners like Phase 2. We can't do this without companies like Semio that helped provide the booze, but I'll let Semio talk about themselves first.
Thanks, Todd. My name is Ross Mead. I'm the vice president of AILA. I do about 0.1% of the work. We have some awesome volunteers who do some more than that, but really at the end of the day, Todd busts his ass every single day to make this kind of stuff happen. So a big round of applause for Todd. So I'm also the founder and CEO of Semio, who is sponsoring the alcoholic beverages tonight. So there we go. Bartenders, they've been awesome. So we're building an operating system, app ecosystem, and developer tools for personal robots. Think about what Microsoft Windows did for personal computing. We're doing for the robots that will be in your home or in your workplace in the not too distant future. We are hiring very soon. And so if you have a background actually in web development or writing or animating, please come and talk to me. Thanks a lot. Have fun, drive safe.
And Arturo Perez, part of Kluge. He's our advisor and ethical design advisor. He's been instrumental in actually our vision, really fine-tuning our vision at AILA. We were able to do a workshop with him and his amazing team a few months ago that really helped me, someone that has a crazy amount of ideas and things we can go in every direction we want to. He was able to really fine-tune and really keep me focused on what our 5, 10, 20-year plan is. So really without him, yeah, we wouldn't be as focused as we are. But yeah, here's Arturo to talk about Kluge.
Thanks, Scott. First of all, I'm just curious, how many of you work in AI today? How many of you already working? Cool. How many in media and entertainment? Nice. Lots. How many in design? How many designers do we have tonight? A few. Come on, Jamie. I know. Cool. I'm seeing more designers come to these events, which is really great. So I'm Arturo. I'm the founder of Kluge Interactive. We're this human-centered design firm. We've been in LA for the last 10 years. And you know, design is really interesting. I love what Todd is doing to the AI community because it's a really technical, it's a technical practice. But behind it, we really got to shine through the human element that is forming all of these technologies and forming all of our future. I think that's what this event is doing, and I think that's design a lot of our role in technology. I see us as representing the liberal arts side of technology, and so I'm excited about what we can do between AI and design and how we can form a better future and a better society. So like Todd said, I also help with the ethical side of AILA, and we're doing a June 20th event on ethics and AI. So if you're into liberal arts, design, the human side of artificial intelligence, please reach out. And of course, if your team needs design team help, please reach out as well. And I'm very excited at this panel of we have a creative icon and some technologies to talk about the future of creative processes and hopefully how we can stay human in this augmentation that's going on with ourselves. So thank you very much.
Here's Molly from AI Showbiz.
Hi everyone, how many of you out there are looking for financing for your AI entertainment company? Anybody? Good, all right. I'm putting on the world's first summit at the intersection of artificial intelligence and the entertainment media industry in Silicon Valley as a 48-hour countdown to May the 4th Be With You Day on May 2nd and 3rd in Silicon Valley. And I just am here to invite all of you to come on out for it. It's going to be so much fun. We've got panels, pitch fest, lots of activities, AIshow.biz. If anybody would like a discount, come see me after. And I just want to salute Todd and everybody here for coming out for such a great topic. Thank you.
All right, now let's get the show on the road. And here's Irena to kick it off.
Okay, great. First of all, I'm going to have everybody here introduce themselves. There's 4 plus me, so I'll go last. Why don't we start with Grady?
Hi, everybody. My name is Grady Miller. I'm a researcher at National Research Group. We're actually just down the end of this driveway here in Culver City. I specialize in entertainment and technology research, specifically from the consumer's perspective or the user perspective. I'm here tonight because I've done a lot of work in the voice AI space and have a lot of interesting insights I'd like to share with you this evening, if we get to it. I come from an entertainment background, having worked in the traditional media space at a movie studio, but have been a researcher for the last 4 or 5 years, specifically focused on entertainment and technology.
My name is Yves Bergquist. I'm the director of the AI and Neuroscience in Media project at the Entertainment Technology Center at USC. It's a really neat place because it's funded by all the studios and a bunch of technology companies like Microsoft, IBM, Nielsen, Technicolor, and so it gives us a really, really unique insight and sensible report to the CTOs of all the studios. We have a very unique insight and a very unique opportunity to design AI and machine learning systems that are going to be adopted at the level of an industry. And to do that, I have a startup called Cordo, and I'm the founder and CEO. which is launching this year with a lot of really exciting products to basically help understand the cognitive relationship between audiences and content.
Right on.
I'm Lindy Rauchenstein. I'm a machine learning engineer at Artie, a company that works in the augmented reality space. We create autonomous avatars, and we democratize the technology, and we make it easy for content producers to create their own autonomous avatars. So we focus on generating characters that are world aware, that are contextually aware, and that can be emotionally empathetic, that can perceive the world around them, and can perceive the people who are engaging with them. A lot of our work is creating characters from IP from famous television shows, but with the ultimate goal of people being able to create and bring their own technology into the world and share it with people.
Hi, my name is Morton, and I'm a director. I have a production company that does TV commercials. I make mostly TV commercials now. And I guess why I'm here is because I created a character back in the 80s called Max Headroom. I'll tell you about that later.
Great. I'm Irena Cronin. I'm CEO of Transformation Group. It's a consultancy that works in AI, AR, VR, and other disruptive technologies. Okay, so this topic of AI and entertainment, I've noticed over the last 6 months especially, has become extremely hot. For whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure, but it's great. I can tell you about 4 years ago, Ken, the CEO of The Void, was actually talking to me about AI characters, and he was the first one that ever brought it up, and I was really excited, and I thought it was also very strange. But I think the time has come. So I'm curious to find out why you think AI and entertainment is being talked about so much now, and what are actually the features that are possible to do in entertainment with AI. So anyone want to jump in? Lindy, you want to start?
Yeah, I can get this off. So the first half of the question, why is there so much excitement around AI characters in entertainment right now? I mean, I think that it's an inherently exciting concept. Like we've always in entertainment been kind of captivated by the idea of AI, and there have been through all of our science fiction books and movies, you know, lots of examples of AI characters that are either really empathetic or really villainous. They're really interesting to kind of bring in. I think that fundamentally some of the interest that humans have in pursuing the goal of artificial intelligence is that it's kind of a window into understanding ourselves. Geoffrey Hinton, who is considered to be the godfather of neural network research, he started off studying physiology. He was trying to understand the human brain, and he was understanding it on the kind of level of perception. We've got like neurons, we have axons, we have fire. And he realized that he wasn't getting closer to really understanding it, so he kind of had shifted over to philosophy and felt like he wasn't understanding humanity and philosophy and switched to psychology and wasn't understanding it there. And so he kind of decided that if you want to really understand something, you need to build it. So we have a really captivating, imaginative approach of just creating and constructing AI. In the last couple of years, there have been really big strides forward in natural language, in the ability of computers to see, have a greater understanding and perception of the world, a lot of progress in affective computing, which is the ability of, from a camera system, for it to do things like localize points on your face, generate some kind of a 3D mesh over your face, and understand what you're doing, if you're laughing, if you're smiling. So the ability to perceive has really skyrocketed. The complexity of the networks has really skyrocketed. You can have reasonably networks that are dozens of layers deep now, which allows them to tackle harder and harder problems. 4 or 5 years ago, a neural network that was 4 layers deep was pretty hard computationally. So we're at a point where all of our capabilities are really accelerating, and that just pervades into speech synthesis, speech understanding, tackling problems like understanding characters and plots, all mathematically. So it's a really exciting time to be in the AI space. There's a lot that you can construct with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I start to think a little deeper about this, I see continuities between virtual reality and AI. So with virtual reality, you're recreating something that's real, and you're molding it in the way that you want it to be. With AI, you're recreating something that is real someplace out there, and also recreating it. So to me, they're very similar, I think. I want to ask Yves, so with AI, so how do you see this continuity working out in entertainment in terms of this need to recreate things that are real? Why are we doing this, and how effective are we actually getting to it currently in Hollywood?
You know, I think if you look at the history of entertainment products, you see a trend towards ever more immersive experiences and characters, where you know, it used to be that entertainment characters and narratives live in our lives, and now we kind of live in theirs. And if you look at Donald Trump, if you look at Hannity, if you look at Marvel, Star Wars, Madame, all of these media personalities which are, and universes that are arguably the most successful today, all have the same thing in common, is they have an extremely coherent, complete, and powerful narrative structure. You can spend your whole life in them. You can spend your whole life in the Marvel universe. You can spend your whole life in Star Wars. You can spend your whole life, unfortunately, in Hannity. And it's a world building thing, and it's something that we need to, as a society, really sort of understand. Is that, you know, entertainment used to be in our lives. Now our whole lives are dominated by stories and narratives. And you know, one of the things that we do at ETC is we really try to understand the very, very cognitive relationship between different narrative structures and different people, different audience segments, and how that results in different type of behavior. For example, we have found a direct link between, we've done a lot of work in music, and so we've created models that predict Spotify performance up to like 98% accuracy. And in that research, we've come across something really interesting where certain tonalities of songs generate very, very specific types of sentiment in the conversations about these songs. So certain pitch values will tend to make people feel more neurotic in their conversations and their appreciation of the song, but that's what drives Spotify performance, is that neurosis. So we've really tapped into something really, really cognitive, and I think the difference between machine learning and AI is that, you know, machine learning, first of all, 99.999% of what's going on here now in entertainment is machine learning, and it's even not even machine learning, sometimes it's like just basic analytics like Excel stuff. But the reason entertainment needs AI versus machine learning, the difference between the two is that the AI creates a more sophisticated, richer framework for generalization of intelligent processes and agents. Right? And it is really that is driving a lot of the conversations around virtual characters in Hollywood. And in fact, it's really interesting because a lot of studios are worried that a lot of studios are struggling with, the chatbot kind of closed domain, really boring, sort of hard-coded questions and answer type domain, and the wider domain of anything goes, like we can talk about guns and stuff like that. And so there's a big debate right now. It's a very, very technical debate. In fact, we're working on a moral knowledge graph to serve as a kind of map, a moral map of these virtual characters, where content creators would be able to essentially set the parameters of the domain that they want these characters to go into, depending on what kind of topic, or how risk averse they are, and stuff like that. So, because entertainment deals with minds and symbols, to do anything meaningful, you really need a true AI approach, not just a machine learning approach. Right? Averaging what's worked before and doing more of the same stuff isn't just going to cut it in entertainment. You need really a lot of techniques that are AI techniques that are not in the domain of machine learning. And so, but we're a fairly long way away from that. Right now, the stuff that most people are working on is like super boring stuff for all of us, but extremely important from a financial standpoint for studios, like archiving, asset tracking, things like that, right? Things that aren't super sexy, that are just billions and billions and billions of those. And there's just hundreds of this little like blocking and tackling. That said, there's also a lot of research, and we do a lot of that stuff, not just in developing AI characters, but telling stories and developing characters and narratives across formats and channels. Like, how do you tell a story using IoT devices on the scale of a city? Right? This is the kind of stuff that we do research on at ETC.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine what Niantic is coming out with soon will incorporate some of, definitely machine learning and possibly some AI as well. And I'm curious about the app that you mentioned that you're working on. So would that work with unsupervised learning? I mean, that has to be extremely difficult.
You mean Corto?
Yeah.
So Corto is a microscope for people who are looking to understand the relationship between audiences and content. So Corto can predict the Nielsen ratings of a TV show if we have the scripts based on the emotional tonality of each character. With a very high level of accuracy. So it's the idea that we're able to dig several levels deeper into why do people like this film? Mm-hmm. What about it? What about this TV show? What about this song do they like? And we're able to go very, very deep in that. And so it's really exciting. It looks like kind of like Jarvis in Iron Man. It's all natural language interface, so you're taking data science out of the data scientists, sorry everyone. And it's a very organic relationship with the data and with the insights, so we're super excited about it.
Great, so I have a question for Rocky. So having just heard what Yves was talking about, and I'm thinking of Max Headroom in the 80s, right? So if you had to build an AI character today, would you build a Max Headroom? And if not, what would it be?
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think that the idea of recreating ourselves with a CGI model is just fun. And I think everybody wants to see that, don't we? We want to see what human beings will look like when they've been processed through a computer. And to me, what's interesting is the fact that we're in the infancy, and it's not going to be really a great-looking thing, and because there's not enough computer power to create a perfect replica of ourselves. So what's interesting is all the mistakes that the computer's going to make, and how fucked up it's going to look, you know? And that was one interesting me with Max Headroom, and I thought that, you know, the computer's not going to be really sophisticated to create a perfect model. Mm-hmm. And what would be interesting is to write the code, yeah, and then let the AI go.
Wild.
and let it see where it goes, and not
Yeah.
try and control it too much, you know, and sort of give birth to something new and fun and different. And I think that's the exciting part for me of this sort of edge of a new wave of entertainment that we're about to hit, where scripts are going to be written by computers, and there'll be digital actors playing the parts in those films.
Yeah,
It's so weird.
There's a couple of really current things that are happening in that direction where people are placing up these websites. One is about cats. So it's AI-generated cats, and they're really, really, really bad. And they look like monsters. And another one has one on Airbnb where they've taken the visuals and also the words describing the places, and it's just mangled. I mean, it's really bad. So, but it's funny. So that's entertaining in itself.
But out of that soup, something great will emerge.
Yeah, probably. I'm thinking in the future, the algorithms are going to become more and more honed, so you'd have to actually put in something in there that'll throw them off, that'll make them do stuff like that. But that's great. So what are your plans, if you have any, to recreate or do something with animation and AI? Because I know you're working at, you did the wall.
Yeah, well, I worked on it.
Yeah.
I was just an animator.
Yeah, you were just an animator.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
fired. But
All right.
it's not really animation, is it? It's beyond animation. What we're talking about.
Yeah. It's animation
There's
is
a
a
blur.
tool set.
When you watch a Marvel movie, you can't tell hardly what's real and what's computer generated.
Yeah, I'd say that most of what's there in terms of animation is computer generated.
Yeah.
And then even some of it is like automated. So you don't even have a human being in there recreating the movement. There are these apps that do that for you. So yeah, if you wanted to do animation these days, you have to actually learn those apps. Yeah.
It'd be good to take the human element out of it altogether.
Oh, you like that?
And
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
On that, I think I have a question. So one of the big question marks for me in virtual characters and artificial intelligence characters is what is the extent to which that a human can be seduced and really fall in love with a virtual character, right? So I think in art and media, there is a level of catharsis between someone who has a certain experience of the human condition, a certain view, a certain vision of the human condition, and creates something for a whole bunch of other people to be like, oh, yes, that's it. That's the stuff I've been feeling all this time. You nailed it. Like I can project myself in you. Do you think we'll be able to create that level of pull? Like, did Max Headroom get like hate mail and stuff like that? Like, did people treat him like an MTV VJ?
No, but I think what you're talking about, it's if you take things away, then the human mind puts things back. So I don't think you have to go so deep creating an AI. I think you can create almost a blank canvas, and it just suggests human beings. And I think human beings will then activate, and fill in all the gaps, and it'll be more interesting and exciting. Like Mickey Mouse is just this, 3 circles, just around. It's just very, very simple. Yet, we project onto Mickey Mouse this incredible character, and it's just a simple animated drawing. And I think to try and make something too sophisticated is, in a way, the wrong approach. I think try and make something incredibly bland and simple, and it would be easier to manipulate that. It'd be less computing power to manipulate it. And then once you've set it up, let it go and see where it goes. Let it take its own journey and not try and manipulate it too much. And don't try and make it too human. And see if it becomes more human itself.
One thing I think we've been talking about is the way something looks. what we found in speaking with people as they interact with AI is oftentimes the way it sounds is actually more important. So the tonal quality, the human-like quality, rather than the intelligence that's embedded in the AI, but really how human-like it is, how calm and personable, how playful it can be, even if it's not as intelligent. That actually is a signifier of humanness and quality that transcends just the visual experience. So I think that's something that just hearing this conversation brings to mind is the way that we've seen people interact with it.
Yeah, you're right, but I mean, look at the voice of Stephen Hawking. I mean, that's a straight computer voice. Yet it's his character, isn't it? I mean, there was a point where he was going to upgrade and change it, make it more realistic, and they were going to base it on his original voice recordings, but he decided not to because this very simple code became Stephen Hawking himself, and that's what I'm talking about. And artists have done this throughout history, taken things away and let people use their imaginations and put things back themselves.
There's kind of an element of matching we found too, that if you look at the psychology of the way that people feel comfort and trust with AI characters that they're exposed to, if you have the elements matching, whatever they are, if something looks visually very realistic, for example, then it should also speak very realistically, and it should move very realistically. When it's kind of on standby, it should shift its weight, and it should move its gaze around the room. If you had something that was working on a simpler natural language kind of a paradigm, you would also want the character to be more cartoonish and to move in a way that was not quite as realistic, and people are comfortable filling in the gaps there. So if you take one of the elements and you make it very realistic and you discourage people from filling in the gaps, then they'll kind of feel that uncanny feeling. If you allow it to kind of, you guide them to the level with which they're supposed to believe the character, and invite them to fill in the gaps by making it obvious that, this is not supposed to be a copy of a full-fledged human being.
Yeah, there's actually a range of that happening, and it started in virtual reality. So you have companies like Baobab Studios with asteroids and other types of experiences that have these characters that are kind of like humans, but they're not humans, and they don't look like humans, but they sound like humans, and they have the same kind of reactions. So it's more similar to what you're talking about, but that's animation. When we're talking about film, so I know, Grady, you're dealing with a lot of entertainment companies. I'm curious to know, what are the features, because you do research. So when you have them asking for consulting work, how do you categorize the feature set for AI? I mean, what could you possibly be looking for and writing up for them? And how would you even then be able to put it in a spreadsheet?
Great question. I think that the jury's still out there. I think one thing that we find is that when it comes to entertainment and the experience that people have with entertainment, they're much more open and willing, and this is kind of speaking to where Rocky was. It's less about a facsimile because it is an entertainment experience, and more about something that they're open to experiencing, rather than the way that they may interact with AI in other parts of their lives in the future. So we find when talking with users and consumers of entertainment, they're much more open to having this interaction with AI in an entertainment environment, rather than in some of the other ways that it's currently being rolled out for them. So this entertainment experience is the idea that it's kind of a divorce from reality. And so we see that acceptance in the user, the consumer, as being much higher than in the financial sphere, than in the home automation sphere, where it's all about accuracy, it's all about security. But in entertainment, it's about flight of fancy, a divorce from reality. Not quite sure that got to your point, but it is something that we see when we're evaluating it. It's not about a rigid set as it might be in other applications of the technology.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a new thing that getting to figure out what the measurements should be and what the sets of items that you're trying to characterize should be are just unknown. So for entertainment, like you're saying, there's a certain set of things that they want. For a company like Oracle, who has bots, and so they have accuracy and they do tests with their customers, and it has to be protected as well. So they have different issues. But all of that, as you know, consultants, all that has to be written down in a report and presented in a way that makes sense. And what I'm just trying to bring up is the industry is so new that feature set is a complete unknown. And I think it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, the technology really sucks also. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, it's just not where it's supposed to be. And we have an enormous amount of work to do until you can get a true AI agent
absolutely.
that can
that you're ideal.
That can incredibly operate and discuss across a very wide domain. I mean, the domains right now are really bound. Unfortunately, the AI field has been taken over by computer scientists who have this just obsession with neural nets. The neural nets aren't going to get us, in and of themselves, they're great, right? But just as a standalone myth, they aren't going to take us to where we want to be and where we want to go. The field is really changing. There's just a lot of really interesting experiments around sort of probabilistic graph models and information theoretic methods and things that are not within the realm of pure sort of computer science machine learning. But I just want to make it really clear there isn't anything very impressive out there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you from what I've seen. Well, we have Artie here. So Artie, the company, I know the principals, and we're working mostly with cell phones. So, and then in the future it will be headsets, but right now it's for cell phones, so most people can get avatar, like characters on the cell phone, and gets more sophisticated as you go along, right?
Right. The base technology is really augmented reality, right? It's not targeted toward headsets. It's targeted to be very shareable. So you have these characters, say you're a digital influencer, or you have created a film and you'd like for your characters to be able to go out into the world and be shared to people on a personal level. We create the technology so that they can speak to you. They can hear what you're saying using the microphone on your phone. They can say sensible things back. They can tell how you're reacting. We have measures of engagement, kind of getting to that question you were asking before. What are you actually trying to target as your features that you're pulling in?
Don't be sensible.
Don't be sensible.
Yeah, I mean, you said a sensible response, you know.
Oh yeah, no, that's a challenge too.
Yeah, but I think that's an issue.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I think it should be more random and make you think, you know.
Well, there needs to be flexibility.
Alexa's really boring, right? It just came up as just random insults about the way you looked in the morning.
Actually, that's a really good idea. That's a really good idea.
Around.
As you can roll that out right now, because if you roll an AI agent that's across a really unbounded domain, it's going to say just completely insane things, and then it could be really cool. It'll be like, I've never thought of it this way.
Guided insanity.
You know what I mean? But there's like, it just like take shots in the dark, like just everywhere, all over the place, and you're like, this is unusual and kind of awesome. Like if you kind of, you know,
it's sort of a bit like life, isn't it?
I mean, the real hard stuff is to make it like dead-on, contextual, stuff like that.
So don't bother.
But we should maybe just like let it loose right now and just say completely insane things to people, and they would just trip out on it. Maybe we'll just find it.
Because that's how life is, right? You never know what's around the corner.
I hope that not everybody I meet is like that. But yeah, you do want to have some diversity, right? I mean, what would be really interesting is if you had an app like that was really wild and confusing, and then all of a sudden was completely rational and came back and kept switching.
Yeah, it's called Siri.
Siri doesn't do such a great job at all that stuff. Okay, so I have a question about features for the future. So I agree with Yves. So currently, when we're talking about AI, like over 90% of it is with machine learning, and it's very particular types of machine learning even, and they've just started now getting into visuals, and that's not really awesome yet. And it's going to take some time for that to work, and it's being done in a neural network and dominated by computer scientists. So you can see that there's a trend going on, and I imagine that something will break through. There's been talk by some in the computer science area that neural nets isn't the right way to go, that we need a new language to figure out what's going on. So I suspect something new will happen, but because right now all we have is basically machine learning, natural language processing, and some visuality. I mean, to some extent, okay. Where do you see AI, I just mentioned it for a second, where do you think the feature set is going to be within the next 5 years? How far will it go?
So there's roughly 3 schools of artificial intelligence. What's called the symbolic school of AI, which is the original school, which really is heavy on feeding AI applications a preset map of the world. It's closer to traditional programming, and it's kind of, the machine learning people would sort of call it cheating a little bit, but it has the advantage of right out the box creating a lot of intelligence over context, using knowledge graphs and things like that. There's the sub-symbolic or connectionist school, which is all neural networks all the time. Right? So this thing's not, and it's great. And neural networks are amazing. They solve about 4% of problems really, really well, right? But there's just 4% of problems. And there's a third school, which I belong to, which is called neurosymbolic, which is basically kumbaya, let's just use, let's use everybody's frameworks and let's build stuff. And lo and behold, the stuff that we've built over the years, over the past 10 years, are pretty amazing. I mean, we've built a hedge fund that doesn't have any humans in it, right? Things like that. And so, the neural symbol, I think, and it's really funny because 10 years ago, everyone, so we're talking about the Bergquist group, OpenCog. If you haven't checked out OpenCog, just really check out OpenCog. And it's kind of my AI family. And like 10 years ago, everybody thought Ben and the team was completely insane. And then the history of the past 10 years has been like people going like this. It's like we're still doing the same things that we were doing, right? We're using hypergraphs and probabilistic logic and evolutionary programming, none of which are machine learning, and we're doing really well. But I think the future of AI really is closer to the neural symbolic school of AI, which includes a lot of neural nets and uses neural nets for what they're really, really good at, but also expands on that to other domains of AI that aren't traditionally machine learning, like evolutionary programming, probabilistic logic, probabilistic graph models, things like that. So I think we're going to see a lot more experimentation. We're seeing that happen already. A lot of the DeepMind team is really all in, and DeepMind is doing pretty well. So in terms of the future, I think we're going to see a lot more philosophical, mathematical methods, like game theories, that are being layered on top of neural nets. I think we're going to see a lot of really cool experimentation and a lot of really good stuff come out of that.
What does that mean for entertainment?
What that means for entertainment is that we're getting really close to being able to understand. All right, so everything's a story. Your sweater's a story, your glasses is a story, your job's a story, your haircut, so everything's a story. And the reason is, stories are a really, really great cognitive mechanism that takes the enormous complexity of the world around us and just compresses it to a set of steps to solve a problem. Now, a story is a set of steps to solve a problem. Right? That's the traditional definition of a story. Guess what else is a set of steps to solve a problem? You know? Developers here, algorithms. Right? So there's an enormously algorithmic structure to narrative that actually drives almost all of our decisions and all of our behavior. And I go back to Yuval Noah Harari and his TED Talk, because that's one of the best TED Talks of all time. And that's what he essentially says. And so what that means for entertainment is the ability, and it's amazing and also a little scary, which we're really very actively working towards at ETC, to very granularly understand what kind of narrative structures generate what kind of cognitive affinity and then what kind of behavior. Like, we're scary close. And when that happens, I mean, it's kind of game over, right? Because we can then tell stories to generate human behavior, like push of a button kind of stuff, right? So obviously, legislators are going to have to be involved. And that ability is beyond the realm of machine learning. It includes a lot of techniques that we've been using in OpenCog for over 10 years now, and it works, and it's really amazing. And we can predict very, very granular types of audience affinities by segment for different kinds of narrative structures in film and TV.
Great. Lindy, you wanted to say something earlier, and I want to tie this into what Yves was saying, because I know the trajectory that Artie is working on. Where do you see Artie going on in the future? I won't say 5 years, because that's too far, but let's say 3 years down the line. Where do you think the progression will be?
Having more and more ability to generate language in a way that's cohesive. There's a lot of strides being made in that from the machine learning world. I recently ran across a network-trained book somebody had written that was writing the 6th book in the Game of Thrones series. They didn't want to wait for it. And so they trained this network with the corpus of the previous 5 books. And it was able to learn the characters, the places, the writing style of George R.R. Martin, generated a full, I think it's 6 chapters of the hypothetical newer book. It was really, really interesting how cohesive it was in actually being able to pull out the characters and the plot. I don't know who here watches Game of Thrones, but this bot had Jaime Lannister kill Cersei, had Jon Snow ride a dragon, which had not yet happened, had Daenerys get poisoned. It was really fascinating that it was just so cohesive. No, there were things where it would run into these syntactical problems. It wasn't speaking in full grammatical English. When you read it, you could tell that it's written by a bot. Sometimes it makes up words that aren't real. LSTM networks famously have a hard time tracking and being completely cohesive over things, but the things that it was able to pull out was incredibly impressive and fascinating. And then more recently on the speech side, OpenAI published just a couple weeks ago their GPT-2 network or something that was generating content that was so convincingly human that they won't release it. They'll release a smaller version of it, but I think especially with the 2020 election coming up, they don't want to put that out into the wild. So I think we're excited about the generative abilities of speech, right? There's already things where you can generate responses that are contextual and that are useful, and then in a VR, AR experience, you can kind of, have that move the story in ways that you've already kind of thought of. But as the technology improves, you can allow more freedom to things, right?
Great. So Grady, where would you put Artie in terms of categorizing it in a list for your client? What would you title Artie in Fable, let's say?
I'm not sure there. I think one thing that is interesting though, listening to this conversation, is we're sort of in a rarefied air here of people who are really passionate about this space, connected to it. And one thing that we think about a lot is adoption and use, and how people are going to actually interact with it or want to interact with these different technologies. I think one thing that is a challenge is this idea of this ambient computing that's going to be predictive.
and simulative of the human experience and how people will reject that oftentimes, and it takes it a step too far. So I think that finding that nice balance between something that is human-like and personable and a natural sort of partner in your entertainment experience, but not taking it to that step of being too creepy, is something that I think is a delicate balance for actual use and adoption, not just for technological advancement. So that's something that we think a lot about, is where exactly that line is when it comes to the way people are planning to use these technologies in an everyday sort of capacity.
Can you not have a dial where you dial in the creepiness to your own taste?
Actually, this is the moral graph that we're building. It allows you to parameter all the stuff and make it as creepy as you want, or whatever. It's a tool to do that.
Rocky, I wanted to ask you, so how would you, let's say AI characters were available now, and you could have something that isn't creepy, you could have something that's really true to life, and you could also have like your choice of creepiness as much as you want. Would you have an assortment of different AI characters for fun, and then would you also have the very true to life character? Would you feel close to them and maybe be able to be friendly with them?
Yeah, I like what you were saying about a computer writing a Game of Thrones novel. I mean, that's true, right? I mean, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I think that it all starts from the script. So I think that's where we should focus and see, you know, just tell the machine to write the script and give it like vague parameters and see what it comes up with, and then cast it from an array of digital actors.
Yeah.
Once it's written the script.
Yeah. So the full creative capability, given that the AI is sophisticated enough to do that well enough, I think, because otherwise now you have the cat stuff where you have the AI putting the paws on top of the tail and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so it also reminds me of William S. Burroughs, where you put together words and somehow you have different narrative, but there was an intelligence to it.
I think it'd be good to have characters that were in a digital actors, unreal digital actors, in a movie that was very realistic, almost like a documentary, if you like, would be an interesting way to go, rather than it looking sci-fi, because it's already sci-fi, you know?
Yes.
But do it as a documentary of itself, maybe.
So let me ask the other panelists here, would you find a movie that was interesting that was only generated, not self-generated, but generated AI characters reacting to each other? I mean, Yves, do you think that we could have something that makes sense now, even now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to see that Game of Thrones book, because if indeed it's good, then it's very impressive. The ability to put natural language together in a way that is compelling from a symbolic standpoint. Right? So again, narrative being the manipulation of symbol. Now, one thing that machine learning does very badly, two things the machine does very badly that are very important to create a narrative is understanding context and abstracting low-level data into symbols. And something that LSTM does slightly better than all the other neural nets, but from a contextual standpoint, still sort of relatively poor. If we can, I think the turning point in AI research overall, but especially for media and entertainment, is going to be the ability to create a machine that successfully abstracts low-level data into nuanced, coherent, human-readable symbols.
Yeah, that sounds as close to human as you can get.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how much time we have. Can someone tell me how much time we have left? 4 more minutes. Okay, so I have a good human calculator. All right, so in the last 4 minutes before questions, obviously there's a lot of legalistic stuff that's going to happen as AI develops more into everyday life, right? Privacy issues, because if you do want to have personalized AI characters, it's going to be collecting data from many different sources. So if you opt in, the issue is, do you even know what data you're opting in to give, which is really difficult when it comes to algorithms searching out all kinds of information on your preferences and other things that you've done in your life. So if you give it license to just scrape Google for your information, who knows what it will pull up. So those are the issues there. Does anyone here on the panel have any pressing issue regarding privacy for an AI right now?
I mean, sure. I think the larger issue is that, forget about the technical challenges. I think the policy, governance, organizational, legal challenges are monstrous and massive. Like, we're using 22nd century technology to solve 21st century problems with 19th century organizations. And it's just, like, you really, I mean, as someone who spent almost 10 years doing AI in enterprise, I can tell you, it's insane. Like, it's the legal departments by far are the biggest threat to everything that we've been talking about. By far. Like, we've had to not work with very, very large companies, very, very large sports teams, because the legal departments just got freaked out, and they have no knowledge of what it is.
Yeah.
They just don't care. They just don't want you to do it.
Yeah.
And it's easier for them for you to not do it. So it's a major issue, and I think it's going to be a major issue in Hollywood. I mean, I honestly don't know how it's going to be doable. I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation completely outside of Hollywood first, and a lot of success outside of Hollywood before Hollywood kind of decides to sort of toe in the water.
We should build an AI lawyer first.
I dream.
It would have to pass the legal associations, and they would block them.
No, behind everything that sucks, there's either a bad lawyer or a bad engineer. Literally. Or both.
Okay, great. So there's a future here, though. All right. So AI and AI characters, and AI in Hollywood, and AI in enterprise, especially, because that's what you're saying will be a driver, and I am a believer of that. Okay, I think we should open up to questions. So, yes.
I have two, but I'll ask one because I want to give other people a chance. You at the beginning, you said you can predict Spotify performance to like X%. Is that in terms of how much people are going to like something, or how many times they're going to play it? Like, what do you guys predict?
Just the performance. So on Spotify, you know, every song has the same journey. It sort of goes up and then sort of decays over time, and we can predict that slope, that journey, with 98% accuracy.
In terms of like number of plays?
In terms of the slope, yes. In terms of
the slope of what?
The slope of number of plays.
Number of plays.
So it rises really fast. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Rises really fast, kind of decays more or less rapidly, and that's what we predict. And 75% of that, by the way, is just on the audio features of the song. So you give me a track, I can give you a 75% prediction on how it's going to do in Spotify version.
I have a question for Yves as well. I just wonder, how do you collect data for your portal app?
24/7 and everywhere. No, it's one of the things that is a condition of. It's one of the things that we do very aggressively is collect data. We collect about 5 million unique conversations about entertainment in China, for example, every month. We're doing the same in Latin America, Southeast Asia. Everything, basically just everything related to film, TV, and music virtually, like including on like, we collect tens of thousands of threads about hip hop on like Nike sneaker blogs, things like that. There's everywhere.
So what kind of incentive do you provide to the users to provide the data points?
For people, for us to get their data?
Yeah. Like incentives.
We don't provide any incentive, we just use the data. The incentive is that it then gets used to create entertainment that is very targeted to what they want and personalized.
Grady, for the entertainment industry, could you say 2 or 3 topics that your customers are asking you to research?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that the biggest areas are around voice technology right now. I think that mobile has been fully researched and fully explored, and people have found ways to optimize that. So we see sort of the next revolution and evolution of the content consumption experience as being in voice. You know, I think it maps along with the disaggregation of all kinds of content consumption and from its brand and from its channel into just sort of a pool that people are wanting to pluck out. We also see it as an opportunity to sort of be cutting through that clutter in the world where there is so much, you know, peak content where it's really difficult to find something that you like. Having a machine to help you explore and surface things that are important to you is something that our clients are looking for. I think that's kind of one of the ones that's top of mind for us right now.
Hey, my interest is in AI and generating narratives that can impact emotionality and therefore health in a human. So first of all, thank you. You're amazing speakers, great panel, and maybe it's an open question for anyone who wants to answer or go first. The impact of health, AI narrative and emotionality.
Yeah, so we actually do that. We do a lot of work in human performance, and so we do a lot of research and development around what kind of health narratives generate better health outcomes. It's a big thing. Again, it's one of the less dark areas of the stuff that we do, because that's an area where if you tell a better story about health outcomes, people will maybe make better decisions and drive behavior in a really positive way.
Where does everybody get their funding for some of the interesting projects that you guys are working on?
We have a number of investors who signed on. We have a number of customers of like major entertainment IP holders. So we've been pretty lucky as far as that goes.
We have clients. We have lots and lots and lots of clients who give us a lot of money to build this stuff and do research, and that's how we get our money. We're actually in our second year and we're breaking even with a 14-person full-time team.
Okay, so this is a huge question because a lot of the traditional VCs have not jumped in specifically. I'm talking more on the VR front and the AR front when it comes to entertainment. All right, so if you're doing an app that is a tech app, both for VR and AR, there's a possibility, and if you're doing enterprise, you can have a traditional VC actually give out money. AI, there's a little bit, if it's pure AI, there's a little bit more of a chance that you could get a VC play on it. I'd say the next 3 years are critical for building up more players that are willing to give out more money.
VCs don't understand AI and they don't understand entertainment, so it's difficult. Very few VCs really actually understand AI, and almost no VC understands entertainment.
Hi, my name is Flo. I'm way over here. I'm new to the AI conversation. I work in VR. And I know my phone is listening to me and giving me things based on things that I'm talking about, and that might be machine learning. I'm not sure if that's AI or machine learning, but it worries me because I think AI is awesome, and I'd love to see it in entertainment. I'd love to see it develop, but I don't like the way it's being used, kind of again without my permission. Do you guys worry about that, or is that just in my head?
No, I also worry about that. I've had the experience too, where I just have had a conversation, not engaging with the phone, with people, and all of a sudden the advertisement on my home computer starts kind of coming up with whatever the conversation was about. So that is a definite concern.
No, it should be a concern for everybody, I mean, frankly. And it is, and it really is. I feel like in the research community and the AI development community, you don't see a lot of people who are like, I don't really care about it. I mean, the people really grow up and spend a lot of time, a lot of money is being spent on thinking about it. I think there's a big difference between, and that's really at the end of the day where the cookie's going to crumble, between research and development and applications. Right? I think the R&D space is just going to be a lot more free, but you just kind of, you don't have kind of an FDA approval type process, right? Which is going to be a disaster. But at least is you have this kind of separation between, AI and R&D. Let's see how far we can push this thing, and applications that are more responsible. Yeah, I think we're going in that direction. What really worries me is when people start talking about, hey, let's not do any kind of R&D. Like, I'm fully in favor of doing military R&D, for example, 100%. But the difference is really about sort of application versus
R&D. Hi. One of the biggest issues we have in entertainment and media is lack of diversity and lack of representation. And with AI, as we know, the data that you're using to train something is biased in some way, shape, or form. It can lead to biased outcomes. How can we prevent the AI systems that we're using now that's training on biased data sets that are, entertainment for typical, WASPs essentially? How can we make sure that those systems don't generate biased data and biased media that's coming out of it?
A lot of companies have been releasing guidelines for ethics in AI. Google's released things, Unity's released things. It really is about sensitivity and understanding the data set that you're pulling in, right? Like you said, in understanding people visually, I mean, these algorithms that are being generated by computer science departments tend to represent computer science departments. They have an especially hard time with women of color, or understanding people who speak in different accents. And so I think that in the last couple of years there's been a lot more awareness of trying to come up with codified ways of balancing bias in the data sets, and push from major companies to address that, and encourage their engineers to value that.
I would go beyond that, and I would say beyond codification, I think there's a good way of applying machine intelligence in entertainment is a bad way. The bad way is to average everything that's worked before and do more of the same. That's terrible. And it actually doesn't work, because one of the things that we found in our research is that a huge driver of success in entertainment is novelty, but not novelty everywhere, right? And so we've created this project where we're sort of really kind of score how interesting anything is based on the ratio of attributes about that thing that are traditional in that thing and attributes of novelty. Look, at the heart of what machine intelligence can do to entertainment is breaking their fucking horrible risk models. Horrible. Like, you would not believe how bad, right? So some guy 25 years ago decided no one's going to go see a movie with an African American lead. And then the next guy was like, Bob said, that wouldn't work, so I'm really going to do it. And the next guy was like, these two guys seem pretty sure that this is not going to work. And that's just, and so a quote an anonymous head of studio, but like the CEOs, very, very most highest level. And he said, I want to take opinion out of development. And that's right there. That's the future, right? And 100% of the time when I talk about AI in entertainment, I say there's a bad way of doing it, which is just the statistical way of just averaging everything that's working and saying, let's do more of the same. And the smart way of doing it is like, you have to measure the right things, right? And as an engineer, as a data scientist, you constantly have to ask yourself this question, am I measuring the right things? And the right thing is, what do audiences think about? How do they feel about this? Right? Not like, how much money does this previous movie make, right? And so we're getting, when I say we're building a microscope, we're getting very, very deep in the bowels of that audience affinity, down to like, how much does color account for why you liked Godfather 2, right? So you're totally right. There's huge dangers in launching this in the wrong way, but you know, the good thing about that is that if people do it the wrong way, it's just not going to work. Right? It's going to fail. The only way that it succeeds is if you do it the right way, you measure the right things. And I see the stuff that we do at ETC as actually empowering creatives. Like breaking the formulas, breaking the risk models, and just innovating in a very data-driven environment where you know that if you innovate in this area, and we're not going to tell you what to do, but we're saying over here you should probably stick to the canons, but like everywhere else, just go crazy. And I'm happy to say that this year, for the very first time, we're using Cordo to develop 2 massive, massive science fiction movies that are going to come out next year.
I'll also add that I think there's a danger about us living in our own echo chambers. I think that's something that we've seen in the last couple of years in this country. I imagine, or I'm worried about a world in which artificial intelligence is allowing for customization to people's predisposed preferences and predilections. Imagine a song that is modified just for you specifically because it knows your preferences in the past, or a TV show or a YouTube clip that changes the color of the characters because it knows what you like. There is an inherent power in mass media that you lose in a world of unlimited customization and personalization. So I see that as a potential danger that we face with this technology. Although, you know, the media, the Hollywood industry has been dominated by a certain, majority for its entire history. There has been bright shining lights of mass communication that have broke through, that have had told universal stories that touched people, that had diverse casts, that had diverse backgrounds, and in a world where everything can be tailored to your particular preference and your particular biases, that's a danger I see.
So I just want to add something, because this is a very important topic, and it could be radically changed by using machine learning techniques and other AI techniques. So my background is basically, for a long time, was financial. So I understand spreadsheets really well, and I understand profit, right? Like, when companies hired me, they wanted to find out what's the bottom line. So the only way Hollywood is going to break through this is if they actually take the first steps and take a chance into these areas that Yves was talking about, the experimental areas, and then they could measure how much money because they're always going to do the money thing. They can measure how much more money they've made because they've made that chance. And because we're human beings and we're very diverse, of course they're going to make money in these other areas. It's just the narrow-mindedness that is driving them along this road, and plot, narratives and plot stories and stuff like that, which have been so narrow for a long time. And I'm hoping that this is going to change.
I think society is also driving it too, right? So I think it's, maybe Hollywood is kind of, is often
it's ready.
running behind. Like, my son played Fortnite, and the other day he plays a female character, and I'm like, this is a really cool character you're playing, and he's like a guy, like he likes football, and you know, and I'm like, this is a really cool character you're playing. He's like, yeah, it's really cool. It's a really cool character. And like 3 or 4 of his characters are female. He's 9. I mean, that's incredible. I would never have done this at 9. Are you serious? So I think something's happening. I think Hollywood is listening, and it's a good thing.
Great. So 2 questions. First, for Lindy, could you, very early on, you talked about empathy and AI. Could you distinguish between empathetic AI and non-empathetic AI? And the second part of this is for Rocky and Lindy. I would argue that Max Headroom was a character with big personality, but not so much empathy. So what made Max such an engaging character, lacking that empathy, and how does that play into what Artie's doing?
Yeah, so when I talk about empathetic AI, it's allowing for the sensory systems of whatever you are working with to pay attention to you as you're engaging with it. It's allowing the camera to see your facial expressions, to see your body posture. And fortunately, there's a wealth of research that will kind of show what different kind of fidgets, if your head is moving a lot, if your eyes are moving around a lot, how you're feeling. Are you feeling positive or negative? Things about your vocal inflections and the words that you're choosing to use. We're really interested in sussing out what your experience with the entertainment experience is and how you're perceiving it as compared to non-empathetic AI, which isn't trying to delve into those human emotional spheres, isn't trying to get the nuance of motion, the nuance of facial expression that we're kind of very interested in.
Max Headroom character was that there are 2 versions of him. There's the English version and the American version. In the English version, he was much darker and he was a kind of a trickster type character. In the American version, he kind of became a clown. And that was because of what you were talking about executives, wanting more jokes, playing it safe, making him cute. But he didn't start off like that. It was much more of a sinister, dark, vision of the future where artificial intelligence will become the politicians of the future, and that's kind of frightening.
I mean, is that frightening? Even politicians are pretty frightening.
I think I'd rather have one than Donald Trump, right? But I don't know. Maybe no. I think maybe you're right. Maybe it's better to have an artificial intelligence.
What was I saying?
Politician.
Right now, it doesn't look like such a bad idea.
Knock, knock. So, in the back, you guys can see me.
Yes.
Hi, welcome. I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but this is my first AI discussion. I know you guys are specifically in entertainment and media, but as far as that goes, I mean, for me, the scale that AI can go up in entertainment, I mean, personally, I can only see it going somewhere as an algorithm maybe for the best movie script or the best storyline or something, what somebody would think as compelling. But what I was wondering is maybe the fundamentals of AI, such as what about, because people develop AI as maybe some sort of parent function to do things that we can't, to look over us in areas that we can't. When we can't calculate how far the moon is, we take an AI or something similar to do those calculations that we can't. And once it is hovering over us, where do you see the society going? Do you see, where do you see us standing as in jobs and still running as a collective group, still togetherness and working, where do you see AI going? Because right now, AI it can never be on a human scale. Either it's going to be under us, or it's going to be on a God complex level. So once it just does that leap, which is going to do exponentials, what do you see?
It's a really good question. It's a big one. I don't participate in the sort of mass hysteria around AI is going to kill us all. I think there's a domain that is kind of the ultimate domain where AI doesn't play very well. It's in the why domain. Why do we do all this? Why? What is this for? That's a human domain, and that's going to be a human domain, maybe forever. And I think what most people don't understand is there will be no AI without a very substantial amount. Because remember, we're building it, not other people. We're building it. There will be no AI without a very, very substantial amount of humanity in it. And that huge framework of why we do things at a very broad philosophical level, AI doesn't play in that. AI may never play in that. And humans play in that big time. So there's going to be a lot of AI, humans in AI, and there's going to be a lot of AI in humans. Right? So I think that's kind of the future. So I'm fairly optimistic in the long run. I'm fairly pessimistic in the short run, looking at the number of jobs that are going to disappear. And transparently, like, I make most of my money destroying people's jobs, and I struggle with it. I mean, it's part of why I do it, because I just don't want to be replaced by it. But we're not ready for that at all, and we need to be ready for that. I mean, think about the amount of disenfranchised. Is that?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm French. That has been created with sort of a fairly limited amount of automation, right? But just multiply that by orders of magnitude, and you can see there's a very, very huge problem. If you look at how, there's a really good New York Times article about how the Waymo vehicles in Phoenix are getting, thrown rocks at, and people are, if you talk to, in Vegas, they have self-driving cars, and you talk to the operators, and they'll tell you that regular Lyft drivers will, like, slam the car, and it's like, it's more than I thought, and we haven't rolled it out yet. It's not out there yet, right? And we already have an enormous amount a fair amount of violence directed at it. So I think, we got to invent rules and norms and institutions that are ours, that aren't government, right? that we are creating ourselves without involving the government, at least at a basic level. I think we have to get together and like, what do we do about this? Like, what do we decide to do as communities, bottom up, not top down?
I'm a long-time production, content creation, animation, visual effects, so I'm much more interested. You guys are just exploring very high-level concepts, and it's great. I'm much more interested in AI machine learning, enabling artists to do their jobs more efficiently. Speaking to your point about taking the risk out of film production, the biggest below-the-line cost on any big film this day is the visual effects budget, right? So I just wanted you to speak to if you're getting inquiries about that. I'm excited about AI machine learning helping us with animation and with stereo conversion. Those poor kids go blind doing that stuff manually. So, talk about the desire for that and where we are in terms of creating those tools.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term, obviously there's these more high-level concepts that Lindy brought up, creating scripts from scratch, AI-written stories. But I think in the short term, you know, speaking more around the development of stories as opposed to sort of the development of effects on the back end, but the opportunity to use machine learning and AI to optimize the way that stories are created so that there is this sort of ratcheting down of cost and at the same time an enhancement of the way the storytelling is made. So decisions, there's a lot less waste in the entertainment industry with that type of implementation. So if understanding the genome of a show and what makes a show or a movie or a YouTube video really work can be enhanced by machine learning and AI as we've been talking about today to help, you know, make things have a greater rate of success, I think is a way of really enhancing the effectiveness of the industry.
Technically too, from an effects side, one of the things that I think was really exciting this year, one of the technical Emmys went to Disney for their Baymax experience. And that was really special because they were able to, you know, typically when you do the rendering, the lighting, on a single computer, it might take like 10,000 years to render a whole Pixar movie, and they were able to do it in like a week or something, right? So that's a major thing, and they were able to do it because they are simulating the lighting not by bouncing simulated particles through it, but they're shortcutting it with the neural network and just cutting down the time so much. So I think that technically is really exciting.
I would say 99.9999% of AI machine learning that's going to be deployed within the next few years in entertainment is going to be in production, post-production. As I mentioned, you know, things like that are really boring, like asset tracking, right? So if you're in VFX, you know, there's hundreds of versions of the same file, and it costs enormously, very, very ineffective and labor-intensive. Indelible metadata, you know, tracking, things like that, archiving. There's a lot of, in being experimented in rendering, where there's a lot of data, so you can predict that a job will fail way before it actually fails, so you can just cancel the job and liberate some compute for a job that's not going to fail. Things like that are just super blocking and tackling. There are like billions and billions and billions of dollars in cost savings in the studio. So that is very much a reality, and going to be even more of a reality. I think the next step will be super smart content recommendations. Like, how do we take the content recommendations to the next level to where even Netflix is not playing in? Right? That's a lot of the R&D that we do is around that. Like, how do we include things like color schemes and tonalities of music into and how it sort of stacks up together in those moments to find patterns and like, oh, Sam likes these moments, so let's find more movies with these moments, as opposed to like, you like Julia Roberts movies, here's another one for you. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So yeah, that kind of stuff.
All right, we got two last questions because I want to make sure you guys have enough time to meet each other afterwards. And it's Sean right back there. Just wait for a second, and then the guy holding the mic, and then you can always ask questions after. Thank you.
So my question falls into the category of maybe business model. I think mainly applying to the streaming. So we talked a lot about the potential for AI to generate narrative and content. So at the point where that becomes viable, in hyper-personalization. So at the point where it becomes viable, where say Netflix or any streaming platform can auto-generate content for you, what percentage of the content that's released on a platform is like an auto-generated show versus something that's produced in the traditional way?
Okay, well, Netflix actually has been creating scripts off of statistical data that's been collected, and actually there have been whole scripts that have been put together like that, just pieces off of different statistical data. So it's already being done. I mean, it's not AI, but it's basing a whole production off of what scientifically is believed to be the best story in a particular genre, right?
And
so,
how successful was that?
What's that?
How successful was that?
This is an excellent question. Of course, they're not going to divulge a lot of the figures, but I have had insight as they started doing this about 3 years ago. The first, I'd say, 30 shows that were put out like that were not very successful. And you could tell, you could tell as people shuffle through, and those were the network originals that were coming out in the beginning. They were not good. But I think people have been noticing lately that Netflix suddenly has a bunch of winners. And I believe that a lot of that is based off of data collection, which is unbelievable, but it's actually working. So
I'm going to be an asshole and say this is not true at all. No script has ever been written algorithmically.
Oh, no, I didn't say algorithmically. No.
We hire the people that you mentioned that works on it, and they work with us.
No. They take the data of preferences and they write a script around the preferences.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Although, however,
so
I would
that's the writers involved.
Yes.
However, I would say that what no one talks about, including Netflix, and especially Netflix, is the enormous amount of tension between the data team and the creative team at Netflix. Like, people showing up with baseball bats at meetings and something like that. No, I'm serious. Like, it's not, don't think that Netflix has it down or whatever. They're spending way more money than anybody else to do it. They're spending a lot of that money in recommendations and personalization in the app, right, of the app experience. In terms of creative, it's happened, you're right. It has stopped happening for a long time. It's not entirely clear to me that it's still happening. What I can tell you is an enormous amount of tension between the people who are coming with data and the people who are making the content, who are like, I don't need your data, just like get out of my office, right? And so with a lot of shades of gray in the middle, where you have some creatives that are very open to it, right? And some creatives that are open to it. And it's the same way basically in all the studios. So Netflix is doing slightly better than everybody else, but not as much better as they would like to think.
So, Yves, one of the very interesting projects that you mentioned was the moral graph. And if I understood it correctly, I was just curious, how is it possible to technically realize a project in a field that has been so elusive to philosophers, narrators, and creators of religion for thousands of years, from a technical perspective? And why were you interested in that personally, and where do you see that going in the future?
It helps to be a little crazy. You're right, it's a considerable challenge. It's something that I was like, it's one of these things you get really excited about. You start the project and you're like, oh shit, we're really doing this. We're in very early stages right now. What I would say to that is, we're creating a map of, a knowledge graph is kind of this concept is part of this concept, right? So it is not as third rail-y as like saying, AI applications should be like this, and this is the kind of moral that we want for them to have. It's kind of creating a moral map, if you will, of like, well, this goes with this, and if people say this, and it means they mean that, and so it's in that branch, and so you want to like turn off the sex branch entirely, or do you just want to turn out some parts of the sex branch, or do you want to completely turn off the gun branch entirely? It is, it's very complex, but it's more of an ontology than just really kind of trying to make moral judgments or creating a very strong philosophical framework.
And I guess that concludes our panel. Can you give it up for our panelists, please? Thank you all for coming out. We still have the bars open. There's still some food left. We'll probably get kicked out in about 30 minutes. But please meet each other. Keep on coming back. And we'll see you on March 12th in Venice Beach. Thank you, guys.